Welcome back! My name is Baller Scuba. This is Video Games Over Time. We are still in 1980, and today we're going to talk about The Empire Strikes Back. The Empire Strikes Back is the sequel to the massively successful Star Wars, so our story picks up where we officially left the Star Wars franchise, in 1977 with our Star Wars video, which is linked below. Since this video is about a sequel to Star Wars, this video will contain spoilers to the original Star Wars. If you do not know the plot of Star Wars and do not wish it to be spoiled, I'm afraid there is not much in this video for you to watch, and I would recommend not watching it. For everyone else, let's talk about The Empire Strikes Back. As we talked about in our Star Wars video, Star Wars was not anticipated to be a success. Nevertheless, George Lucas negotiated to get the rights to the merchandising and the sequels to the film. Lucas did not wait long before he began working on both of these fronts. Even before the release of Star Wars, a novelization of the film was released. On November 12, 1976, Ballantine Books published Star Wars from the Adventures of Luke Skywalker, which was credited to George Lucas, but ghost-written by Alan Dean Foster. In this novelization, Foster fleshes out the backstory of the Star Wars universe in a way that the film does not. Most notably, the novelization sets up the character of the leader of the Empire, Emperor Palpatine, even describing his rise to power. Because the novelization was released before the film, many of the novelization scenes represent earlier drafts of scenes than the film's final cut, and contains many deviations from the final film. Nevertheless, the novelization proved to be successful, selling over 3.5 million copies by the time the film was released. As part of the contract with Alan Dean Foster, a second novel was to be written. George Lucas decided that this second novel should be a sequel to Star Wars. This was still before the success of Star Wars was known, so Lucas decided to instruct Foster to write a novel that would be the basis for a low-budget sequel to Star Wars in case the film was not a success. As a result, Foster wrote a sequel that is limited in scope. The result was a novel named Splinter of the Mind's Eye, which was published by Del Rey Books in March 1978. This time, Alan Dean Foster was given credit for writing it. The novel follows Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia on the swamp planet of Mimban, 1 year after the events of Star Wars. There, they struggle against the Galactic Empire, including Darth Vader himself, with the help of the locals on the planet. The novel did represent a low-budget vision of a sequel, reusing many props from the original film, and not including the space battles. The novel also does not include the characters of Han Solo and Chewbacca, because Harrison Ford, the actor playing Han Solo, had not signed a contract for the sequel yet. However, with the success of Star Wars, this sequel idea was abandoned in favor of a much higher budget sequel. As a result, Splinter of the Mind's Eye became part of what became known as the Star Wars Expanded Universe, alongside the Star Wars newspaper comic strip and Marvel's 1977 comic book series. With the prospect of a full, high-budget sequel now firmly implanted in his mind, George Lucas began by trying to put himself in a better position than he was before Star Wars. Unfortunately, his special effects company, Industrial Light and Magic, had lost all of its employees. Many of those employees had left to work on the Battlestar Galactica television series, which helps explain why Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica have similar styles. Lucas was able to hire many of the employees back. Lucas also had to bolster the staff of Lucasfilm, which had also lost several employees. After the success of Star Wars, 20th Century Fox was eager to negotiate with George Lucas for a sequel. Lucas wanted to personally help finance the film this time, hoping to become independent from the industry. 20th Century Fox liked this idea and was more willing to agree to a high budget for the film. The final contract gave George Lucas final cut privilege, and Lucasfilm 77.5% of the profits if the film grossed over $100 million. 20th Century Fox also waived all creative control over the film. Lucasfilm also kept control of licensing, marketing, and merchandise, with Lucasfilm receiving 80% of those proceeds and 20th Century Fox receiving the remaining 20%. George Lucas, now with much more control over the project, decided to limit his responsibilities on the project. He decided to focus on the financing and the running of Industrial Light and Magic. He reached out to his former professor, Irving Kershner, to direct the film. Kershner was coming off directing roles for Raid on Entebbe, a 1977 historical television film for which he was nominated for an Emmy, and Eyes of Laura Mars, a 1978 thriller starring Faye Dunaway and Tommy Lee Jones. Kershner was hesitant to sign on to the project, but his agent convinced him to do it. George Lucas also reached out to science fiction author Leigh Brackett to write the screenplay. With some of the major people in place, writing began around August 1977. George Lucas initially wrote the script with Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces as an inspiration. In the book, Joseph Campbell compares myths from different cultures, seeing in them a similar structure, an archetype of the hero's adventure. George Lucas tried to give his film that same structure. Lucas wanted to have one main plot and 3 subplots in this new film, which he had decided to name The Empire Strikes Back. This structure would be similar to American Graffiti, his first major film. George Lucas and Leigh Brackett worked out several different subplots together. Leigh Brackett delivered her first draft on February 21st, 1978. George Lucas was disappointed in it. However, Lucas could not work with Brackett on revisions as Brackett was in the hospital. Leigh Brackett died of cancer on March 18, 1978. She was 62 years old. So, George Lucas began to work on the next draft himself. It was in this draft that Lucas started using episode numbers for the films, with The Empire Strikes Back originally being Episode 2. Lucas also came up with a critical plot point at this time. This plot point became the pivotal scene of the screenplay, and Lucas began reworking the structure of the entire franchise. The Empire Strikes Back became the second film of a second trilogy, dubbing it Episode 5. After the 5th draft, Lucas hired Lawrence Kasdan to help write the next drafts. Lawrence Kasdan had just finished writing another script for Lucas, which we will talk about in a future video. Lucas, Kasdan, and director Irving Kershner then developed the screenplay into its film-ready form. The Empire Strikes Back became a more mature film than Star Wars with a darker storyline. Meanwhile, the Star Wars Holiday Special aired on CBS. As we discussed back in 1978, the Star Wars Holiday Special featured a lot of the original cast from Star Wars in a poorly received variety show. This special took a much more lighthearted approach to the franchise and is largely forgotten. However, it does introduce a new character in the bounty hunter Boba Fett, who was still in the early design phase for The Empire Strikes Back. However, since George Lucas had no involvement in the television special, the plot of The Empire Strikes Back ignores the events of the holiday special. Filming began on March 5th, 1979 in Norway, where ice planet scenes were filmed. The ice planet was inspired by Flash Gordon and the 1951 film The Thing from Another World. The production moved to London, where over 60 sets were built. Through some difficulties, filming was able to finish on September 24th, 1979, although over budget. Industrial Light and Magic, George Lucas's special effects company, created the special effects for the film. The sets, landscapes, animals, machines, moving props, and battles of the film provided the company with a lot of work and grew the once struggling company. John Williams returned to create the soundtrack, with the London Symphony Orchestra performing. The final budget of the film reached $33 million, over $104 million in 2020, well over the $18 million initial budget of the film. This was one of the most expensive films to that point. This put a strain on George Lucas's finances. The bank threatened to call in the loan. Lucas was forced to make a new deal with 20th Century Fox in order to secure the loan. This deal gave 20th Century Fox a higher percentage of profits, but Lucas kept the sequel and merchandising rights. The Empire Strikes Back premiered on May 19, 1980, had an official release on May 21st, and a wider release in June. Where Star Wars had an opening weekend box office of $1.5 million, The Empire Strikes Back earned $4.9 million in its opening weekend, over $15.4 million in 2020. However, The Empire Strikes Back could not match the success of Star Wars overall. In its first theatrical release, it earned $181.4 million, over $572 million in 2020. The film was re-released in July 1981 and November 1982. It would gross $222.7 million in total, over $702 million in 2020, less than half of what Star Wars grossed. Despite an initial mixed reaction from critics, the film did receive award nominations, primarily for its effects and sound. As time has gone on, the film has been more well received. The Empire Strikes Back is seen as a superior film to its predecessor and is often listed among the best films of all time. Much like Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back came with several pieces of merchandise. Marvel Comics released a comics adaptation. Del Rey Books released a novelization of the film written by Donald F. Glut. That novelization was then adapted into a manga comic book in Japan by Toshiki Kudo. Lucasfilm released a 24-page read-along book with a vinyl record. Hankin even released a pinball machine, the final machine built by the manufacturer. As is to be expected, The Empire Strikes Back also spawned several video games. We will be taking a closer look at these in the future. For now, we will take a look at the plot of The Empire Strikes Back. So if you have yet to see the film and do not want its plot spoiled, now would be the time to stop watching. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. For those that have stayed, let's talk about the plot of The Empire Strikes Back. The Empire Strikes Back takes place 3 years after the events of Star Wars. The Rebel Alliance, led by Princess Leia, has relocated to the ice planet Hoth. The Imperial fleet, led by Darth Vader, is searching for the new base. To help, the Empire sends probe droids across the galaxy. One lands on Hoth, and Luke Skywalker goes to investigate. Luke is captured by a Wampa, but is able to escape. However, Luke is out in the cold and starts to succumb to hypothermia. Before he passes out, the spirit of Obi-Wan Kenobi speaks to Luke and tells him to go to Dagobah to train under the Jedi Master Yoda. Han Solo discovers Luke and rescues him by placing him inside a Tauntaun. The two are rescued the following morning. However, thanks to the probe, the Imperial fleet is now aware of the rebels' location. The Empire launches a large-scale attack on the rebel base. The rebels have no choice but to evacuate. Han Solo, Princess Leia, Chewbacca, and C-3PO escape on the Millennium Falcon, but the hyperdrive fails, so they hide inside an asteroid field. Darth Vader sends bounty hunters to search for the Millennium Falcon. Luke Skywalker, along with R2-D2, travel to the swamp planet of Dagobah in an X-Wing. After a crash landing, Luke finds a small green creature, who turns out to be Yoda. After some convincing, Yoda agrees to teach Luke more about the Force. Han Solo is able to sneak around the Imperial fleet and travels to the planet Bespin to Cloud City to meet his old friend Lando Calrissian. But the bounty hunter Boba Fett was able to track the Millennium Falcon and, with Darth Vader, force Lando Calrissian to turn the group over to the Empire. Vader plans to use this group in order to capture Luke and turn Luke to the dark side of the Force. Vader plans on freezing Luke in carbonite and chooses to test the system on Han Solo. Han survives and is given to Boba Fett, who plans on turning Han into Jabba the Hutt. Lando Calrissian frees Leia and Chewbacca, who fight their way back to the Millennium Falcon and flee the city. They are unable to save Han Solo. Luke does return and fights Darth Vader in a lightsaber duel. Vader severs Luke's right hand, then attempts to convince Luke to join the dark side. Luke accuses Vader of killing Luke's father, but Vader says that he is Luke's father. Luke, clearly upset, drops into the shaft and hangs onto an antenna. He telepathically reaches out to Leia, who convinces Lando and Chewbacca to go back to save him. The Empire sends TIE fighters to stop the ship. R2-D2 is able to reactivate the ship's hyperdrive, and the Millennium Falcon escapes. Luke rejoins the rebels, getting a robotic hand to replace the one he lost. Lando and Chewbacca leave to find and save Han Solo from the clutches of Boba Fett and Jabba the Hutt. And that is The Empire Strikes Back. The film accomplishes what it sets out to do. It continues the story that began in Star Wars, brings some new twists and turns, and sets up the third film in the planned trilogy. I would highly recommend watching the film, not only because of its influence on video games, films, and television, but also because of its quality. This is a film that is often cited as one of the best films of all time. It's worth your time. And that is going to do it for The Empire Strikes Back. My name is Baller Scuba. This has been Video Games Over Time. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in our next video where we'll play a new adventure game from a brand new company.